Welcome to the first module of Benchmarking for Carbon Conscious Purchasing. The goal of this course is to help organizations benchmark their procurement processes to determine what is working, what is not working, and how to achieve sustainability goals through their purchasing. While it might seem obvious that organizations should be tracking their procurement given the vast amount of resources it involves, the reality is that many organizations experience a gap between creating sustainable policies and tracking the impact of products and services they acquire to reach their energy efficiency goals. That's where we want to help. This presentation is part 2 of the Benchmarking 101 video that was previously posted on the Empower Procurement website. During this module, we'll be building off the content from that first video to help lay the groundwork for understanding the importance of benchmarking and ensure that benchmarking can help you achieve your desired purchasing outcomes. In future modules, we'll work through the details of how to leverage the right tools and resources to ultimately achieve measurable impact and identify repeatable methods for success. So let's dive in and get started. This is our agenda for the day. First, I'll give a brief introduction to Empower Procurement and how we can support your organization through our different procurement initiatives. Then, we'll talk more about what benchmarking is and why it's important for your organization. And finally, we'll talk through some common barriers and their corresponding approaches. After each segment, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions and provide any feedback you have. At the very end, there is also a short quiz to test your understanding and to ensure you receive credit for attending this session. Empower Procurement is a program led by Prospect Silicon Valley and funded by the California Energy Commission. We help institutional organizations in California decarbonize their purchasing streams through a variety of procurement initiatives. We can help with things like streamlining contracting, understanding best practices for identifying services professionals, and best practices to follow for products procurement. Our procurement initiatives are led by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Energy Solutions, and ZNE Alliance, and covers 6 main areas of focus for procurement: practices, contracts language, services, products, e-fleet management, and benchmarking. This course has been developed by Energy Solutions as part of the Benchmarking Procurement Initiative and peer-reviewed by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. We also want to recognize all the other organizations in the Empower Procurement team. Okay, so let's start with procurement as a whole. As seen by the pie chart on the left, and as you probably know based on experience, purchasing activities can have a large impact on your organization's greenhouse gas emissions. However, if you deal with procurement at your organization, you also know that procurement is a complicated matter. There are a lot of stakeholders involved, both within and without your organization, and a lot of diverse needs that need to be met. On top of just meeting your procurement needs, it can be difficult to determine which clean energy technologies to purchase, especially as they are emerging and changing so rapidly. The recordings and live webinars in this particular course will focus on the benchmarking aspect of procurement. As you'll see in the upcoming slides, benchmarking can help simplify operations and ensure you're making more strategic, carbon conscious purchases to help you reach your sustainability goals. Now, I want to open it up for any initial questions or feedback that you might have about Empower Procurement. Okay, with that short introduction to Empower Procurement, let's move into understanding what benchmarking is in the context of carbon conscious purchasing. Once you're able to assess the various aspects of your procurement, you might start asking, why is benchmarking important? Well, benchmarking helps to evaluate and guide institutional decision making. By implementing this process, your organization will have the capability to gain understanding of the energy and greenhouse gas emissions associated with your purchasing decisions. This leads to increased adoption of clean energy technologies and ultimately reduces an organization's overall carbon impact. When implemented effectively, it can additionally reduce spending and make your procurement process more efficient. By setting yourself up to be able to measure and track the various attributes of your purchases, there are 3 key outcomes you can achieve. First, it helps you understand where your spending is going. Can your organization be more efficient with certain purchases? Can you change the way you're purchasing, or can you change what it is you're purchasing in order to minimize your impacts? How can your organization save money on its key purchases? These are the types of questions benchmarking helps answer by helping you analyze specific attributes that your organization cares about. Oftentimes, you can save money by switching to more sustainable products. Second, you can minimize your environmental impacts by ensuring your purchases are greenhouse gas emission conscious, energy efficient, and or sustainably sourced. By tracking the specific energy attributes and greenhouse gas emissions associated with your purchases, you can calculate exactly how much impact any changes to your procurement process will have on the planet. Along with environmental impacts, this is an opportunity for your organization to also address social impacts like fair wages and labor. Finally, benchmarking ensures your organization is working to meet sustainability goals set out by leadership. These goals may be formally laid out in a climate action plan, or they could be something you plan to have in the future. By implementing these from an organizational perspective, you can also help make the market for sustainable products more affordable. Overall, by measuring and tracking these different aspects, your organization can ultimately understand where you can make improvements and decide on which aspects you want to commit to changing. So now that you know why it's important, let's take a peek into what benchmarking looks like in this context. Within the procurement context, the key principle to benchmarking is that you can't manage what you don't measure, and what you measure matters. Benchmarking focuses on understanding how effective your procurement practices are in measuring the environmental attributes you care about so that you can ultimately manage them in ways that better align with your organization's goals, like reducing greenhouse gas emissions or lowering energy bills. That means that the first step to addressing any procurement issue is assessing your organization's current methods of measuring environmental attributes. Through this assessment, you'll be able to understand what activities and product attributes your organization should be tracking. Finally, once you have evaluated, you need to commit to implementing those improvements. This is a key step because making those changes ultimately allows you to measure and track your desired outcomes. It's important to note that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to achieving successful benchmarking. We'll cover common strategies and solutions, but these should be tailored to meet your organization's specific needs. So let's take a look at an example of how this might play out at an organization. Let's consider the Department of Energy Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, which is a repository for nuclear waste. This site had set out environmental goals, which included analyzing their database of procurement card purchases. However, what was laid out on paper wasn't actually panning out in real life. This became clear after they did a periodic review of their environmental management system. In assessing this part of the process, procurement card holders actually reported buying green products. However, upon further assessment, vendor surveys revealed that only 16% of dollars spent on office supplies were actually green products. Additionally, they realized that their system was part of the problem. After a green purchase was made, the purchaser could check a box to indicate that the purchase was green. However, before purchasing, the system could not help make a green purchase, and afterwards, there was no way to query about which purchases were green. To do so, there was a manual process needed to review each purchase individually. Thus, this made purchasing green products difficult, the actual verification of those purchases was inefficient, and they weren't measuring specific attributes of the products. In response to this hindrance to their environmental goals, they committed to developing targets to improve their sustainable procurement process, which ultimately resulted in 6 primary procurement process modifications. These included 1. Developing a green catalog listing, 2. Modifying the system to allow for additional querying capabilities, 3. Adding a database field about potential future green alternatives, 4. Inclusion of sustainability clauses for new contracts, 5. Improvement of sustainable product tracing for reporting and assessing, and 6. updating procurement procedures to require justification of non-green purchases. This commitment thus ensured that the right attributes were being tracked and reporting on those attributes was more streamlined. This example not only highlights specific issues with the tools that DOE was using, but it also shows a common misconception within organizations. Because procurement is such a large part of budgets, many organizations assume they're being effective without actually benchmarking their processes. As this example shows, when procurement is looked into more carefully, more often than not, organizations will find areas that can be improved. When it comes to assessing current procurement practices, there are two main aspects to examine. First is qualitative benchmarking, which tracks how your organization is managing the sustainable procurement process. By taking stock of your processes, your organization might think about questions like, how important is sustainable purchasing to your organization? Are there shortcomings in the current procurement procedures? How can your organization measure the impact of your purchases? This is where other pieces of the Empower procurement offerings can come into play. For instance, the Practices and Contracts initiatives can help you specifically understand the practices you're implementing or help you update your contracting language to more easily facilitate working with sustainable minded vendors. Second is quantitative benchmarking, which you can think of as tracking the products themselves. This makes sure that your organization has a good handle on purchasing data so that you are adequately tracking what it is that your organization is buying. The quantitative aspect of benchmarking also includes measuring and understanding the environmental attributes of those purchases. That way, you can understand whether changes can be made to make your purchases or vendors more sustainable. Ultimately, you need to determine whether the changes you're making to your processes and tools are making measurable impacts. Are you saving money? Are you saving energy? Are you reducing your organization's greenhouse gas emissions? Within Empower Procurement, our e-fleet products and services procurement initiatives all help address the quantitative aspect of benchmarking. Again, benchmarking is an important step in procurement because you can't adjust or change something that you don't measure. Ultimately, what you choose to measure and how you choose to measure it is important. Bringing together the qualitative and quantitative aspects ensures that you have the right processes to facilitate sustainable purchasing and that you're measuring the outcomes to understand whether those changes are actually effective. To put it another way, the qualitative aspect helps you understand the how, and the quantitative aspect helps you understand the what and the why. Oftentimes, organizations only focus on the how, but we at Empower Procurement want to make sure you understand the what and why as well. To get into some specifics, here are examples of various qualitative and quantitative indicators that can be tracked when benchmarking is implemented effectively. Each of the qualitative indicators needs to be paired with a quantitative measurement, and each of the quantitative indicators needs to be paired with some sort of process or tools update to ensure that those outcomes are achieved. Your organization can choose to start with a few of the most important indicators and then work your way up to tracking more and more aspects as you get comfortable with the process. Now that you understand a little more about benchmarking, let's consider more real-world examples. When making purchases related to your organization's operations, whether it's replacing an air conditioning unit or doing a lighting retrofit, purchasing energy efficient equipment will help your organization save money on your energy bills. Since heavy energy using products will be installed for many years to come, this will continue to save your organization money year over year. Additionally, energy efficient equipment often qualifies for rebates from utilities, helping you save on upfront costs. Furthermore, high-performing equipment requires less maintenance. For instance, LEDs are much more efficient and have longer lifetimes, so they don't need to be changed as often as CFLs. By having a system that can help guide you to make more efficient purchases, you'll continue to improve your organization's operations. If your organization manages fleets of any kind, you might consider upgrading the fleet to have electric vehicles. This will reduce your overall greenhouse gas emissions, and your impact will continue to improve as California's grid becomes cleaner. It's important that you take into account which of your purchases could impact greenhouse gas emissions, which is why benchmarking is a critical step to determining your highest impact purchases. Finally, with implementing a benchmarking system, you'll be able to compare different energy aspects of the products, like life cycle energy costs and efficiency, along with comparing the suppliers of these products to make the most rounded green decision possible. By considering these aspects during purchasing, you can make decisions to help your organization be more resilient to potential blackouts and weather events related to climate change. Again, we'll take some time to open up the floor for any questions or feedback that you might have about benchmarking in the context of carbon conscious purchasing. Now, let's talk through some common barriers to benchmarking and their corresponding approaches. The Roles, Rules, and Tools framework is a proven data collection and analysis method that guides all activities under the Empower Procurement program. Derived from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab's work to provide the Department of Energy with insights to review and improve the Federal Energy Management Program guidelines, the Roles, Rules, and Tools framework allows full assessment of an organization's set processes, practices, goals, and barriers. In the next installments of this course, we will look at specific applications for each part of the framework in the context of benchmarking. Now that you've seen the Roles, Rules, and Tools framework and how it can impact successful benchmarking, we want to highlight examples for each aspect. First up is roles. When there is no one at your organization assigned to lead the benchmarking initiative, attempting to pursue any part of sustainable procurement becomes unorganized and inefficient. It's critically important that someone at your organization has time within their role specifically carved out to plan, monitor, and assess your sustainable procurement processes. By doing so, they can focus on improving the various metrics your organization cares about and can streamline the process by ensuring that green purchases are approved by a single point person. Next is rules. When there are no clear rules or goals at an organization that strive towards sustainable purchasing, it is deprioritized and results in purchases that are neither as cost nor energy efficient as possible. One potential solution to this is creating a sustainable procurement section within your organization's climate action plan. That way, there are clear goals related to sustainable procurement, and it is highlighted as an important piece of moving towards your organization's climate goals. If your organization does not currently have a climate action plan, consider whether one will be developed soon or whether it makes more sense to incorporate sustainable procurement guidelines elsewhere. And finally, we want to highlight a real world example of an institution that greatly benefited from implementing the right tools. This is an example of an institution who is required to report to the Department of Energy about compliance with procurement mandates. However, their internal procurement systems did not allow them to pull any information about what they had bought, so they couldn't produce a report on the relevant information. To get around this, they had to create a plain text file of a year's worth of purchasing data and have someone manually search for keywords to find purchases that matched a certain type of product. When they updated their platform to allow the United Nations Standard Products and Services codes to be tied to purchases, it turned a multi-hour effort into being able to produce a report with the simple click of a button. Not only did this save them people hours that could then be used to actually analyze the purchases, but it also allowed them to use a standardized coding scheme that allowed them to track information directly from vendor invoices. Although we will go more in depth into roles, rules, and tools in future modules, we hope that these examples highlight the importance of each aspect within the procurement context. We've covered a lot throughout these slides, and it might be a bit overwhelming, but we've come up with a simple checklist with actionable first steps you can take today. First and foremost, continue participating in this course and network with your fellow participants. Sharing your experiences with benchmarking for sustainable procurement can lead to identifying common gaps and working towards solutions together. Additionally, we are providing you with an action item for each of the roles, rules, and tools aspects of our framework that you can do today. These are not only the first steps in a benchmarking assessment journey, but will also help you to prepare for upcoming modules. Finally, let's wrap up with any questions or feedback you might have on the barriers and approaches we covered in this section. Thank you so much for joining us for the first module of benchmarking for carbon conscious purchasing. Please feel free to reach out to us at Energy Solutions if you have any follow-up questions or if you would like to enroll.